Hello, my name is Dragon Trainer, and this video will be about my Five Nights at Freddy's theory, because why not? First things first, most of the information I'll be using comes from MatPat's game theory. Here are the links. If you haven't watched them before, pause the video and watch them now. First of all, a quick explanation for those of you who don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is. It's a point-and-click horror-themed strategy game where you play as a night guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, basically a Chuck E. Cheese ripoff. The catch is, there are 4 animatronics trying to get into your office in order to kill you. In the first game, at least. Things get complicated in the second game. Things get even more complicated once you learn more about the mystery surrounding this pizzeria. Every now and then you'll find a newspaper clipping that give more details about the history of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You learn that 5 children were lured into a back room by a man wearing one of the mascot costumes. It's heavily implied that they were killed, then stuffed into the animatronics. So yeah, those animatronics are being possessed by the angry spirits of the 5 missing children. Anyways, where was I? Oh right, my theory. Well, before we get to that, we should go over what happened from the beginning. Way back then, probably sometime in the late 70s to early 80s, there was a Fredbear's Family Diner, the very first location. In one of FNAF 2's minigames, we see the very first killing take place here, where a child gets murdered by the purple guy. It's very likely that the spirit this child ends up possessing is the marionette. Later on, a whole chain of restaurants was opened up by Fazbear Entertainment. In one of these locations, the first missing children's incident occurs. Yes, that's right, the first. This was the incident that resulted in the marionette sticking the dead children's spirits into the animatronics. By the way, if you pay close enough attention to this minigame here, you may notice the body of the 5th child, who's heavily implied to have been stuck into the Golden Freddy suit. Flash forward to the summer of 1987, a new location opens up and several new animatronics were introduced with the intention of replacing the older models. Another set of killings occur, 5 more children end up dead, and the place gets shut down for a few months. Then it gets reopened for a few short weeks, and it's during this time period that FNAF 2 takes place. The bite of 87 happens, and the place gets shut down yet again. Flash forward to 1993, where FNAF 1 takes place. A new security guard by the name of Mike Schmidt gets hired, and if you're good enough, he gets to live 7 nights. Sometime later at this FNAF 1 location, each of the animatronics attempt to get to the Purple Man, but are taken out one by one. That's when the 5th child shows up to confront the Purple Man. Purple guy gets scared, jumps into the Springtrap suit, and dies. 30 years later, a new horror-themed attraction opens up called Fazbear's Fright. This is where FNAF 3 takes place. Here we find out that the purple guy has possessed Springtrap and becomes the lone antagonist of the game. It also becomes possible to help the children move on into the afterlife, if you know how to access all of the hidden mini-games and exploit the glitches correctly. Anyway, okay, with that out of the way, it's time to get to my theory. My theory is that the 5th missing child of the first serial killing incident survived. Let me explain. The main reason why I believe that the 5th child survived is because of the Chuck E. Cheese killings that FNAF most likely took inspiration from. On December 13, 1993, at a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant in Aurora, Colorado, 5 employees were working after hours when they were shot by former employee Nathan Dunlap. Here's the thing though, one of the employees, Bobby Stevens, survived despite being shot in the face. He played dead, escaped through the back door, and got help. His testimony was what led to Nathan Dunlap's arrest. So, if Five Nights at Freddy's took inspiration from this story, then it stands to reason that there's a good chance there was a survivor. This fifth child was nearly killed, most likely passed out from all the trauma and blood loss. He may even have been stuffed into the Golden Freddy suit while he was still barely breathing, but he was discovered the next day and taken to a hospital. Unfortunately, unlike Bobby, the fifth child was unable to testify about what really happened. The trauma was too much for him. In fact, it wouldn't be surprising if he locked away that memory into the back of his mind as a survival mechanism. This would also mean that the killer was still at large, and the fifth child still in danger. In order to protect the child, he was placed into witness protection, and the fact that he survived was stricken off the record. So, what happened to the fifth missing child? He recovered from his injuries and grew up. Well, he recovered from his physical injuries, but the trauma most likely never left him. In 1987, the second set of killings occurred and showed up on the news. These newspaper articles detailing the 1987 killings was what most likely sparked the fifth child's lost memories and prompted him to start investigating. His memories had yet to fully return, but the seeds were planted. He had to learn more. One thing about those newspaper articles, it doesn't really make sense for them to show up the way they do, randomly replacing a rules for safety sign every now and then. There are two possible explanations for this. Either the ghosts are doing this, or the night guard was hallucinating. It doesn't make sense if it was the ghosts, though. They're haunted by the spirits of children who've been stuck in those animatronic suits for ages, and those articles were printed long after their deaths. Most likely, those articles were a result of the night guard's hallucinations. But that would mean that he's seen those articles before, wouldn't it? That means that the night guard has already been investigating the mystery behind the two sets of killings. Mike Schmidt was there to investigate the killings. That's why he refuses to quit his job despite being outright told by Phone Guy that the animatronics will kill him if they get to him. He was determined to get to the bottom of those killings. At first, he may not have known that the animatronics were being possessed by dead spirits. Once he puts two and two together, however, he tries to reason with them. It's me. It's me. It's me. Of course, the more he says this, the more he hallucinates. If he's not careful, a hallucination of the Golden Freddy costume will show up and force the game to shut down. The Golden Freddy hallucination causes Mike to mentally shut down because of a long ago trauma associated with being forcefully stuffed into that suit shortly after being killed by the purple guy. It's me. It's me. Don't you remember me? It's me. That's right. Mike Schmidt was the fifth missing child and the sole survivor of the first set of killings. He learned about the second set of killings of 1987 through newspaper articles. He learned that the place was opening up again in 1993. He knew that if he didn't do something soon, the Purple Man would strike again, and another group of children would be murdered. In FNAF 3, it's revealed that after 1987, most likely in 1993 at the FNAF 1 location, the fifth child confronted the purple guy in the secret boarded-up safe room. At first, it seems like the fifth child's a dead spirit. Is this really the case, though? I hypothesize that the fifth child represented here is actually just a metaphorical representation of Mike Schmidt. I mean, you don't really believe that the purple guy is purple from head to toe, do you? No, we know that this fifth child is different from the others. If Purple Guy could really be cornered and killed by a dead spirit, he would have been killed a long time ago, either by the marionette, the freed spirits of the other animatronics, or by a ghostly version of Golden Freddy. Purple Guy is afraid of this one particular dead spirit. But why? It's because that's not a dead spirit. That's Mike Schmidt, all grown up and finally confronting the man who almost killed him. The man who killed his friends. So why is Mike Schmidt represented by the spirit of a dead child? It's because he never truly moved on. He may have survived, but he was still nearly killed and traumatized by what happened to him as a child. He was still one of the victims of the Purple Man killings. He still saw himself as one of the 5 dead children from way back then. He was alive on the outside but dead on the inside. At first, the very much alive and grown-up Mike Schmidt was able to intimidate the purple guy and back him into a corner. That is, until the purple guy realized that Mike was still afraid of the Springtrap suit. That's why the purple guy hopped into that suit in the first place, because he was desperate to gain a psychological advantage over one of his former victims. And then he died. If Mike Schmidt was the unnamed security guard of FNAF 3, then it makes even more sense that he was the one who helped the dead children move on into the afterlife. In both the good and bad endings, the purple guy dies. This means that his death is not enough to help the dead children. There was something else that Mike had to do for the kids. He had to get those dead spirits to trust him, to recognize him, to realize that he was their friend and that he was there to help them. He had to convince them that the nightmare was over. Why would they trust him though? Remember, these kids were tricked by an adult who was most likely a former security guard wearing a stolen costume. Why would they trust Mike? That's where the minigames come up. In order to access these minigames, however, you had to do a bunch of seemingly random things, such as dial in a number into a bunch of tiles on the wall. What if, however, those secrets were the key to gaining the trust of the dead spirits? What if those were something to help the dead spirits clue into the true identity of the night guard? What if all those seemingly random things you had to do was Mike remembering some of the games he used to play way back then when he was a child? Also, notice that the way to help the dead spirits move on was to bring them a single cake. No, they don't each get a whole cake to themselves. That's the cake that's used to help the 5th child move on. When each of the other children were presented with the cake, it's not them cheering up that we're seeing, it's them coming to a revelation. That cake served as a reminder to them of the 5th missing child. That's why they all show up at the end to wish the 5th child a happy birthday. They realized the truth of what was truly going on and were willing to move on into the afterlife. Mike gained the spirits' trust by proving his true identity and helped them cheer up and move on. In doing so, however, the dead spirits in turn decide to repay the favor by helping Mike move on with his own life as well. One of the other reasons why I believe the 5th child survived is because of FNAF 3's good and bad endings. In the bad ending, you see the head of Golden Freddy, the one that Mike was stuffed into. In the good ending, however, the head is completely gone. This could be because in the good ending, not only has Mike successfully helped his childhood friends move on into the afterlife, but he himself has also managed to move on and live his life. It was finally over. He's no longer dead. Well, it wasn't quite over just yet, actually. 30 years later, Fazbear's Fright opens up, and when Mike learns about this, he knew he had to check it out. He got a job as a security guard there and checked to make sure that the nightmare was truly over. On night 2, however, it became obvious that he was going to have to confront his worst fears one more time. He had to defeat the Purple Man one more time. Thus, the trailer for FNAF 3 could be reinterpreted differently. If we assume that the marionette is still around as evidenced by his appearance in the game, then perhaps the words that show up in the FNAF 3 teaser trailer was actually the marionette talking to the Purple Man. I can't stop you. I never could, but he can. He will come back. He always does. We have a place for him, and he will stop you. Of course, there's still a few holes with this theory, one of which is that Golden Freddy shows up in FNAF 2 where the night guard you play as is Jeremy Fitzgerald, not Mike Schmidt. Well, there are other theories that could explain that one away. Like, what if that Golden Freddy was actually possessed by one of the former employees who was killed by the Springlock incident? It might also be possible that, despite there being an AI for Golden Freddy in FNAF 2's custom night game, well, maybe it's still a hallucination. Well, in any case, it's just a theory that I decided to just share because, well, why not? So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I liked making it.